Hello, writers, and welcome back to my series. This is part 2, and today we're going to be exploring, is it writer's block or is it a world and not a plot? So I'm going to try my best to explain and go through what this means, and to do that I'm going to talk about it a bit now. I'm also going to provide a general example. Then I'm going to go through a list of reasons why I think it makes a plot, or like the plot I provided makes a plot. And I'm also going to apply my own current project so that I can speak from my own experience and own knowledge of my own project because that is the one I know best. So to try and explain it, a world you have maybe maybe you know the era, maybe you know important figures, notable figures, big events going on, and like worldly issues perhaps. But then you might find yourself unable to actually write anything about it that makes a story because you don't have a plot, something to follow, and something actually focused and happening in this world that you've created. And you could have really cool ideas for a world and make it like really unique and innovative, and or maybe you're like really inspired by someone else's world and you're adapting things and putting things together. But then you don't have a plot of your own to make this world come to life through characters and story. So here we're going to look at a world that I randomly created for the purpose of a general example. So this world, it is set in the far future where an apocalypse has struck the lands and left it unlivable for many who can't afford to survive. People must make weapons from what they find, and factions are formed between survivors. There is a war amongst factions each year. So this gives us a general overview of what the world is like. It's a post-apocalyptic world where people have to try and survive every day. They have to make weapons, which means fighting is a common occurrence and defense is something you need to consider. There's an event every year. There's a war between the factions, so people have to fight. And through this, we have a world. We have a general premise, and we have an idea of what we want to go for, as in like the themes and maybe possible things to take from to actually make the plot. And going into the plot, here's one that I wrote up that can go alongside this world. So Maine, the character, isn't involved in any of these survivor factions. In fact, she's the daughter of a governor who lives in luxury with the rest of the council at the expense of those who go to war. Though one day May finds someone breaking into the capital's territory and must make a choice between following her father's values or discovering her own. Now you can see on the screen right now, these are two different paragraphs I've written, but they are set in the same world one is the world and one's the plot. Except the plot has a bit more of a focus on something happening to actually tell a story and reveal the world through the story. I'll go back to the slide in a moment, but I do have a checklist that I wrote on this other slide. What makes it a plot? So the first one is there's a perspective. We have a main character to focus on. We have someone to see like through their eyes. So May is our perspective. We see the world through her eyes as the daughter of a governor who lives in luxury despite this post-apocalyptic world ridden with violence and death. We have a point of focus in the world. So the points of focus would be, maybe where she lives. The story maybe starts where she lives in like her nice house, nice building. Maybe there's an apartment complex for these counselors. Not sure. Could be part of your world building, but there's a point of focus. The story isn't about the entire world. It's about this area of the world where we can reveal more about the things around her. And we have a cause for the plot. So our cause is that she is a governor's daughter, and as a governor's daughter, she has values to uphold. But the cause of the plot is when she meets someone who is not living in luxury, someone who is part of the outside world, someone who needs to survive and fight to survive, and for some reason they are trying to break into the capital territory. There's a cause for the plot because she has a choice to make here, and she is involved in this now that she finds this person. Because does she hold her father's values where she probably has to tell on this guy, and punishment ensues, maybe something bad's going to happen. Or maybe she has to discover her own values and think about what would she do in this situation without considering, the council and her father, her being her own person. And we also have plot and perspective related characters. So we have May and we have this person who broke in. We don't have everyone in the world involved because we don't need to write a story about everyone in the world to reveal the world. We can do it through the eyes of someone, as in the perspective, like mentioned earlier. So we have plot related characters and perspective related characters, as in the people we see the world through, like their eyes. So we just go back to the slide, we can just take a look. We have May, who is the character. We have the focus. She doesn't live in the survivor factions, but she is living in luxury. There is a plot about like values and having to make a choice when this event happens. And we have another main character who can be involved in the plot to help it move forward and tell the story of this world, actually. That's what I meant. And just to provide another example, I'm just going to go to a similar slide of like this and explain my project. So for my world, it is a fantasy world with a human race called Senti and a magical race or magical people called Kami. There are two continents where both live, although the Queen of Senti is sending the Kami to their mainland after an assassination attempt. This gives us a snapshot of the world. It's a fantasy world, so it's probably magic. We have two different races, where one of them are magical people, one of them are more humans. Two continents, although these races do live together, although this big event has happened where the Queen of the Senti had an assassination attempt on her, and now she wants the Kami to go back to their mainland. This is a world, but it doesn't have a plot in it because we don't have an exact story to follow. Because we lack the points that were noted earlier. There's no perspective, there's no focus in the world. There isn't necessarily a plot and perspective focused character, and there isn't a cause for there's sort of a cause for the plot, but there is no plot in the first place. There's a cause for what's happening in the world, but there's no cause for the plot. And on the right you may see my plot. So Iris Galacia, who is my main character, she's a tarot reader who thinks she's destined to work for her parents forever, until Marin Boudreaux enters her life and needs her help rescuing their friend that's been captured during Queen Taylor's Kami deportation. She explores finding her place in the world while uncovering Marin's secrets. So here we can look at the points once again. We have a perspective, which is Iris Galacia's perspective. It's not everyone affected by what's happening. So we aren't looking at the world in the eyes of everyone, but we are looking at the world in the eyes of Iris Galacia. There's a point of focus in the world, so the area around Iris and Marin are the focus. We are going to be looking at the world in these areas, and we don't have to look at the entire world to find out what's happening and explore it. There's a cause for the plot. So Marin needs Iris's help, but the global event isn't the plot itself. There's a specific thing happening that, the inciting incident that actually kicks off the plot and makes it a story to tell. And I also have plot and perspective related characters in my plot. So the story is about Iris and also Marin, and not the Queen who was mentioned in the world, because the story is not from the perspective of the Queen, and she isn't actually making up the plot, but she helps with the world building and makes up the world. So hopefully this explanation of my own project kind of helps with differentiating between world and plots, because one gives you like a setting or like an actual base to start off, but one is actually a focus or something that we tell a story through to actually reveal the world. You reveal the world through your plot. So it's good to ask yourself, if you're considering that you have writer's block, you're sitting down and you're not so sure what to write and you can't think of what to write, and maybe you've considered direction already for my first video, but maybe you can't actually get to direction before you have your plots. So you might want to ask yourself, do you just have a world, or is there an actual story to tell? This is pretty important before you can actually get to direction. Maybe I should have made this video beforehand, but here it is now. And you can reflect on the points I made earlier about what makes a plot: perspective, focus in the world, a cause for the plot, and plot and perspective related characters. Maybe you have some other points that you have that make up a plot, and that's good too. You can write those down and use as a checklist for yourself to check if you have a world or a plot, so then you don't get stuck thinking about what to write about. I don't think I have anything else to add right now, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and if anything comes up, I might be able to explore it in a different video. And that brings us to the end of this episode concerning plots versus worlds. Of course, you can check out my Twitch if you'd like to and follow it for streams that I do every week. But other than that, thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you in a different video or on my Discord server. See ya!